will call our town boarding meeting to order for October 10th at 7:04 p.m. Our first roll of order is our call to order with roll call.
Mayor Christy Melendez,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Miles Baker,
Here.
Christian Morgan,
Here.
Ken Bennett,
Here.
Paul Rennemeyer,
Here.
Brendan Boudreau,
Here.
Ivan Adams.
Here.
Mr. Morgan, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our next item of business, item number 3, is review of agenda by the board and addition of items of new business to the agenda for consideration of the board. Are there any additions? If not, I would seek a motion to accept the agenda as presented.
I would move that we approve the agenda as printed.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor from Mr. Adams and a second from Mr. Boudreau to accept the agenda as presented. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Our agenda is approved as presented. Item number 4 is board liaison reports. Mayor Pro Tem Baker, Parks, Recreation, and Culture Advisory Board.
Thank you. The pre-cab met October 4th at the Recreation Center. There was a presentation by the director on the Town of Windsor strategic plan, so he updated the pre-cab committee or board on our strategic initiatives going forward. There's also a review of the pre-cab goals, which were improved marketing, communication, and regional visibility, focus on customer service, and diversification of programs and facilities. And there was an update on a trail request that a neighborhood was going to bring forward. After meeting with staff, they decided to do a little more work on that, so that may be coming to us in the future. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Town Board Member Morgan, Water and Sewer Board, Clearview Library Board.
Sure, so the library board met September 29th. We had a presentation from the school district on their bond issue. And following that, met with the engineers for some of the design work on the new library facility. Just a general update about that. Water and Sewer Board will meet this Wednesday morning. Unfortunately, I can't attend, but Mr. Rennemeyer has graciously offered to attend in my stead.
Did you have anything for the library?
Well, the library board was the
Oh.
presentation from the school board and
Gotcha.
then
Okay,
the
gotcha.
engineering study.
Okay. Town Board Member Bennett, Planning Commission, Windsor Housing Authority.
No updated reports at this time.
Town Board Member Rennemeyer, Historic Preservation Commission, Great Western Trail Authority.
There is no update at this time on the Historic Preservation Commission other than the study being done by CSU is continuing to move forward. And with the Great Western Trail Authority, like I told in previous updates, there's a new trail manager position and he is working with adjoining property owners up and along the trail, mostly between Severance and Eaton, to establish those relationships for future expansion of the trail.
Okay. Town Board Member Boudreau, Chamber of Commerce.
No report at this time, except for that the chamber is meeting this Wednesday at 7 a.m. I would imagine they'll be doing a recap of the Meet the Leaders night from last week. I'll have a report the next time we meet.
And don't forget the Chamber Annual Dinner is
Yes.
on the 19th.
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Town Board Member Adams, Tree Board, Poudre River Trail Corridor Board.
The tree board met last Thursday at 5 o'clock and they discussed plans for 2017 and talked a little bit about the fall festival and their float. And then they also approved a motion to proceed with hosting the Colorado Community Forestry Conference. And so we've decided that we're gonna have it here and we'll have to find a location and all that, but we're kind of thinking about, he hasn't looked over here yet, but the rec center. But anyway, we know we have a beautiful facility and we want to show it off. The third thing was we decided to use the $100 award for winning the Fall Festival Parade float competition to replace a dead tree in an appropriate location in Windsor. And we've thought about the park, and we've thought about the rec center, and so they want to make a big to-do out of it, and they want to think about the ash borer and try to get that part of it, the education too. So I'll go on to the Poudre Trail Board. Becky Safarik, Greeley Assistant City Manager, described the work to date on the Greenway Master Plan, and she explained the 3 phases that they're going to consider. 1 would be an inventory of the Poudre studies, plans, and documents. 2, they would do a preparation of a material for sharing and updating the corridor in information. And 3, a final, I couldn't read my writing. I was trying to read my writing there, I'm sorry. But 3, a final plan for compatible land uses in the Greenway corridor and recommendations for acquisitions and improvements. And then a report was given on the condition and capital needs of the trail, and a big discussion followed. Members shared their concerns regarding the extensive repairs needed as a result of the life cycle of the improvements, as well as the flooding conditions that has occurred the last 3 years. A discussion was also held regarding the best way to provide a sustainable means to maintain and manage the corridor over time, and that such stewardship should be pursued formally, as well as the board's role moving forward. So they're looking at a possible new role for the board, and we'll talk about that later. But I read that because I wanted to make sure I had all the points that they were discussing. And then the third thing that took most of the time was a discussion being held pertaining to a potential offer by the Bro organization for a donation of land to the town of Windsor. And this potential offer will be discussed later in this meeting as a public hearing and ordinance agenda item, so I'm not going to talk any more about it, but we'll be discussing it, and we have the right people here to discuss it later. Okay? Thank you.
Okay. And I have Downtown Development Authority and North Front Range MPO. So on Downtown Development Authority, they have been working on the budget, which we all were just came from a meeting this evening seeing their budget recommendation for approval for 2017. So they've been working on their budget. We do have another meeting this coming Wednesday on the 12th at 7:30 a.m. We'll be talking about how we do an executive director evaluation at some point, and perhaps some kind of a board work session, planning some kind of strategic session for the upcoming year. So that's pretty much it for the Downtown Development Authority. For the MPO, I attended last week back-to-back. It was Coalition I-25, and then 34 Coalition meeting, and then MPO. And so there were some things that came out of all 3 of those meetings, so bear with me. I've got a little bit to report here. So first of all, with MPO, the MPO director, Terry Blackmore, will be presenting to our board sometime in early 2017. For those of you who are new on the board, she will talk to us about MPO, you know, what they do, and what they're currently going to be working on in their plan for 2017. Some of the items that we're working on is looking at expanding the Van Gogh service up to Estes Park. We had our MPO meeting in Johnstown. We had an opportunity for those who wanted to go early to do, we could drive an electric car if we so chose. We do have an electrical charging station at the CRC, and when I mentioned that, I found out that evening that there were perhaps some grant and fund monies available, so I immediately called Mr. Arnold the next morning, and we have in motion, hopefully, some kind of funding to ensure that we do have a second charging station at the Public Works facility, and hopefully with some monies. CRC was armed this weekend when we had our grand opening with the air quality banner that was provided by MPO to remind again all to take care of the air. Our biggest item that we really had discussion on was our call for projects. We had 17 call for projects this year, and I think it was a really good step forward that we were able to fund 15 out of all 17 projects. And out of the 2 that were not funded, they were not funded intentionally because they have their own funding sources. So they're going to be completed anyway. So all 17 projects will be completed and move forward. But we were able to fund 15 of those. I'm just going to give you the highlights out of each of those fundings. So there's 4 funding sources, and with the CMAQ funds, the highest recipient went to Weld County with $2.2 million for compressed natural gas buses. In small communities, Windsor was the highest recipient award winner there for $1 million for our intersection improvement to State Highway 257 and Eastman Park Drive. Dennis Wagner came that evening and did a good presentation to all of the fellow board members, because just because this was a recommendation and an approval, it didn't necessarily mean that the board would approve those funding. So every committee, every community had to kind of come and share with the board that evening their program, and Dennis did a great job to defend Windsor, so we'll be getting that $1 million for that intersection. The large community recipient was Fort Collins with $2.1 million for a Timberline Road corridor improvement. And then there is a TA, which that funding went to Johnstown for $250,000 for a Little Thompson River corridor project. At the 34 coalition meeting, we announced our contractor consultant team, it is going to be CH2M. And so we're going to get started on that project. They said we're hoping it will be an 18-month project to do the 34 Pell study. That budget is a $2.1 million. It will cover from US 34 from County Road 47 and a half to Glade Road. And Sean Conway reminded us that the last time they did a Pell study on 85, it took 3 years from start to fruition to bring that consultant on. And this year, we developed this and decided we needed this about in early February or March. So within 9 months, we were able to achieve what took them last time 3 years. So hopefully that means we're getting better at what we're doing, and I'm being able to optimize our money a little bit better. On Coalition 25, the Crossroads Boulevard interchange and bridge construction is underway. That actually was to have started some time this weekend. The truck climbing lane on I-25 down at Berthoud is on schedule to hopefully be completed by the end of the year. And just a couple of things, just a couple of reminders. On December 7th, Coalition I-25 is having a legislative roundup. We are inviting all of our key legislators to that meeting, and we would really request that we are asking for a lot of significant representation from all the municipalities, the business corridor, anybody who thinks that I-25 is a key factor in northern Colorado and is very important to making those improvements sooner rather than later. We hopefully will have all the legislative officials, and we want to make a very strong stance how it's very important for northern Colorado to get those additional dollars to complete that funding. So that is going to be on December 7th, and those meetings are at 6:30 at the South Weld County office there off of the, what is that, I-25 and County Road 47 and a half or 45 and a half. And we,
It's on the front.
yeah.
19.
Yeah. So we have made progress this year, though. There was a bill introduced. It's called the TLRC, a bill that was introduced, and it was passed for the first time. And that sets the stage for bonding. And bonding is significant because without bonding, you can't make any kind of funding happen. So even though, I mean, you might think, well, who cares if they're all gonna be in favor of bonding? That's key, that's the starting point that will lead us to some dollars for transportation funds for our future. So, sorry for the long reports, but those are some things that were happening last week with regards to transportation and roadways. Item number 5 on our agenda is the public invited to be heard. We didn't have anybody who signed up, but if anybody is wishing to speak on a non-agenda item, we would request that you come up, state your name and address for the record, and then you have 3 minutes. Is there anybody in the audience this evening who wanted to speak on a non-agenda item? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to item B, which is, oh,
The gentleman in the black.
but did you have something?
We received a letter that there was gonna be discussion about the I-25 improvements.
Yes, that's on the agenda this evening.
Okay, so there is gonna be discussion on that?
Yes.
Okay.
Moving on to item B is the consent calendar. The consent calendar consists of 4 items this evening: minutes from the September 26, 2016 Town Board meeting and the October 4th, 2016 special meeting, advisory board appointments, report of bills for September 2016, and the cancellation of our December 26, 2016 Town Board meeting.
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve the consent calendar as proposed.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor from Mr. Rennemeyer and a second from Mr. Baker to approve the consent calendar as presented. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Our consent calendar is approved. Moving on to item C in board action. Our first item this evening is a public hearing. Once I open the public hearing, we will be allowing, and the board has some time to ask questions. We will open it up to the public, and those in the public who want to speak on that issue, you will have 3 minutes at the podium. You'll need to state your name and address, and then you will have 3 minutes to state your name and address, and then you'll have 3 minutes to give whatever statement you would like to make. So we have a public hearing, ordinance number 2016-1526, repealing and amending portions of Chapter 17, Article 13 of the Municipal Code regarding enhanced design standards for development within the I-25 State Highway 392 Interchange Corridor Activities Center area. This is legislative action, and Mr. Balstead will be presenting.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Town Board. Yes, this item consists of enhanced design standards that would apply to new development within the Corridor Activities Center, or the CAC, that was established by the town's IGA with Fort Collins. So just a little background for everyone in the room. The City of Fort Collins and CDOT and Windsor all cooperated to make the improvements to the I-25 392 interchange back in 2010, and the Town of Windsor and City of Fort Collins entered into an intergovernmental agreement at that time, and that intergovernmental agreement anticipated that the CAC area would be treated as a gateway to both communities, and therefore the IGA required both communities to adopt acceptable design standards that would apply to development. The town and Fort Collins both adopted design standards back in 2010 and 2011, and those existing standards are in Chapter 17 of the Municipal Code. In May of last year, the town board received a request from a property owner within the CAC to include automobile dealerships and related in the list of uses within the CAC. This prompted a discussion between Windsor and Fort Collins regarding the IGA and a potential amendment that would have allowed for automobile uses, and it also prompted a discussion about adoption of enhanced design standards. Those standards that were adopted in 2010 are fairly basic. There's a very short section of the code, and the attached enhanced standards that staff was directed to prepare would enhance those standards for site design, landscaping, parking, building design, orientation, compatibility, and lighting. So following an extensive public outreach process between fall of 2015 and early 2016, the town board eventually approved Resolution 2016-24 on April 11th of this year and forwarded the enclosed, in your packet, the proposal to Fort Collins, which included, among other things, design standards. In the time since the town forwarded that proposal to Fort Collins, the property owner that had proposed dealerships, auto dealerships, has since withdrawn that request. Therefore, in July, staff removed the references that were specific to auto dealerships since they were no longer proposed. And those revised standards were submitted to the city of Fort Collins. The only revisions that were made were to remove automobile dealership references. The city planning and zoning board, as well as city council, reviewed those standards and approved of them. And the city also amended their code to bring some of their berm and landscape standards up to the same level as the standards that Windsor was proposing. The Planning Commission heard or considered the enhanced standards and held a public hearing on September 21st. The neighbor concerns and comments that were received at that time revolved primarily around building height. And as staff explained at the Planning Commission meeting, building height is not addressed in the enhanced standards because it's addressed elsewhere in the municipal code already. And also there was a concern about the width of buffer requirements between the existing neighborhoods and future resident or future commercial uses. And as those of you that were on the board at the time during that previous conversations, that was a very lengthy conversation, and we did expand the buffer width at the request of the neighbors, although they're not, the neighbors that came out on the 21st were not happy with the result. They would still prefer a wider buffer. They are wider standards than are required anywhere else in town. And then lastly, other comments called attention to differences between the Windsor and Fort Collins standards, and those, you received a separate correspondence that came in over the weekend from Mr. Downey, and staff also had sent a response to those comments, which was just provided to Mr. Downey here tonight. And also I'd like to be sure that that response to those standards is included in tonight's record. So. And without getting into all the detail in the packet of information that I just handed to you, to summarize, it's essentially staff went through point by point the issues that were raised where it called into question whether or not the town standards are higher or compatible with the city's standards. And after both Fort Collins staff and Windsor's planning staff reviewed both, we still find the standards to be substantially comparable. They're not identical language. Fort Collins's code is laid out differently than our code. And so both staffs looked at the standards and attempted to make them as comparable as possible. Some of them are more stringent in Fort Collins, some of them are more stringent in Windsor, but on the whole, they are very comparable. With that, the legal aspect in the memo is simply pointing out that since the city of Fort Collins has already accepted the standards that the town first sent over in July, we shouldn't, the town shouldn't make changes to that without further consideration and referral to Fort Collins if such changes are considered. Otherwise, the Planning Commission at their September 21st meeting recommended that the town board approve the enhanced design standards, which, if approved, will result in amendments to the existing CAC standards found in Chapter 17 of the Windsor Municipal Code. And I forgot to ask Crystal to put I've got a map of the CAC that if you want to display that, if there are any questions, or if there's anything from the public.
Yeah, Mr. Baker.
Thank you. My concern from the beginning was always these buffer yards by the neighborhood. And we have a chart here that's 40, 50, or 60 feet and some plant multiplication factors. What would it be, what was it before these enhanced standards were proposed?
I believe the original proposal was 20 to 30 feet, and so we did increase it quite a bit and include a sliding scale that the buffer can be reduced in size if the landscaping is beefed up, so to speak, or if the landscaping is just at the minimums, then the distance needs to be greater.
And did we have a landscape factor in there before, or was it just a 20 or 30
No,
feet?
the sliding scale was new, I believe.
Okay.
Yes, and the reference to buffer is something that is unique to this area. In other areas of town, we do have setback requirements, but they're primarily building setbacks.
Right.
So we do have setbacks in other parts of town, but this would establish a greater buffer between the two uses.
Okay, so if they put very little vegetation, they would have to have a 60-foot buffer.
Correct. And all commercial industrial uses go through a site plan process. So during that process, staff would also be looking at things such as screening of headlights, possible fencing or screen walls, things that can go above and beyond to mitigate incompatibilities as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Mr. Bennett, did you have questions?
You need to read that statement sometime.
Okay. You want to go ahead?
Yeah. Madam Mayor, for the record, I would like to point out that in my capacity as Town Board Liaison to the Planning Commission, I was present at the Planning Commission meeting during which this matter was previously presented. I wish to state that my participation in the Planning Commission proceedings has in no way influenced me in my capacity as a Town Board member this evening. I will make my decision and cast my vote this evening based solely on the evidence presented during this public hearing.
Any questions before I seek a motion to open public hearing? Mr. Adams?
Madam Mayor, I wondered, Scott, will you tell us a little bit about how Fort Collins reacted to the 65-35 funding and who would receive that funding? I know originally we were talking about 65 to Windsor, 35. Should I stop and let you talk? Go ahead.
Yeah,
I know
tonight's-
you're anxious to
Well, yeah,
answer it.
Tonight's item is solely regarding design standards.
Okay.
The other parts of that proposal to Fort Collins are still, I guess, unresolved at this time. The design standards are the only thing that we're moving forward with tonight.
Okay, I knew it was in the packet, so
Yeah.
okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Mr. Bolstead? Then I would look for a motion to open public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Second?
Okay, I have a motion on the floor for Mr. Bennett and a second for Mr. Rennemeyer to open public hearing. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Public hearing is now opened. So for those of you who would like to participate, you may step forward once you are recognized. State your name and address. Crystal, do we have will the lights be able to work? Okay. The lights will go on and you will have your 3 minutes. So, did you want to come first?
Sizemore. I reside at 8204 Mummy Range Drive, which is on a frontage road, as you know, on the north, I guess it'd be on the southwest side. My concern being here tonight is what is going to happen to that frontage road when they do the improvements on I-25?
Can you speak to that?
It's not necessarily about the
It's,
CSU
it's
side.
not, yeah.
So I think the intention is that CDOT will be needing that right-of-way for the project. We have not sat down with them specifically. We know that they intend to meet with the property owners adjacent to that, but I don't know if I have a specific answer. I will bring your name to their attention and ask them to contact you directly about that so they can talk to you directly.
Okay.
But it is a CDOT project, and that frontage road is in that right-of-way that they can use for this project.
Okay, okay. Our property backs up to the green belt that backs up to that frontage road. And it's our concern for property values and stuff, how that's going to affect us. If you could forward that
Yeah.
information, I'd be.
Why don't I walk out with you, and I'll get your name and number,
Okay.
and you can get a hold of it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else who wish to speak in public hearing on this matter this evening?
Good evening. My name is Elaine Burrett. I reside with my husband Don at 7931 Bayside Drive in Country Meadows. I know I'm a familiar face to Madam Mayor and three of the other board members. My husband and I attended just about every meeting of the town board and spoke when we had the opportunity to. We also attended the joint meetings with Fort Collins. I know that we're new faces to three of the new board members. But the reason why we have attended so many meetings is because we care. We care about our home and we care about our neighborhood. I'd also like to state that, you know, we know that Country Meadows is kind of a no man's land because our mailing address is Fort Collins, yet technically we live in Larimer County. However, we really do feel like we are a part of the Windsor community. We shop at the grocery stores, we buy gifts in the downtown area. Our doctors and dentists are here in Windsor, and we spend a lot of time in Windsor, and we love the Windsor community. So please don't, keep that in mind. I know, there are boundaries, and legally we may not be officially Windsor, but we do consider ourselves to be a part of the Windsor community. I do want to thank the planning department for their time, effort, and professional expertise in crafting these additional design standards. I know a lot of time has gone into them, and we appreciate the enhancements relating to noise, lighting, landscaping, screening, and building orientation. We still do have some concerns with buffer and building height as adjacent homeowners that would be directly affected by development. I'd like to talk about the buffer and building height that we are still concerned about. When development does happen, we will lose a lot of privacy and views and property values. We would like to request at least an 80-foot buffer yard between our property line and the start of development. The design standards currently state 40 to 60 feet. As neighboring homeowners, we'd like to ask that you consider 80 feet as a minimum. 80 feet is stated as a buffer from I-25, and we think that established residences that have been in existence for 20 years deserve equitable treatment with the same buffer of at least 80 feet. As far as building height, I am concerned about the fact that the limits are not specified in these design standards. And I'd also like to put out an idea here. The map that Scott projected just a moment ago shows the purple section right here, which is the acreage in question. And that purple indicates employment. So I'd like to suggest that we encourage some kind of office or professional park or technology campus be an appropriate use for this area. Can I conclude with one sentence?
Yes.
Thank you. To me, this would be more appealing than a retail environment or a large multi-story hotel, and it would create a favorable gateway image for Windsor, as well as some tax revenue. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Diane Howell, and I live with my husband, Dave, at 7919 Bayside Drive in Country Meadows subdivision. And again, it's good to see you guys. Thank you, board, and thank you, Planning Commission, for all the work you guys have done on the CAC standards. I did send an email to the board on the 23rd of September through the town website, and have not received any acknowledgement or response from that. So I wanted to make sure I came here tonight to get on record that I, and as well as other neighbors, we have constantly, or as much as we've been able to, let you guys know that we are not happy with the buffer width as it is proposed. We never have been happy with the 40 to 60 feet. We felt like, because we are existing homeowners where we are located, that buffer should be much larger. And as Elaine stated, 80 feet minimum. Schneider Electric, which is backed up to Country Meadows on the north side, there's at least a 100-foot buffer there. So why can't that be all the way down? The other thing that I brought up, and many of us have brought up before, are the building height restrictions. We think that building height limitation needs to be in the standards, because in the code, it says 90 feet height. And does that mean that we could have a 90-foot building 40 feet from our back fences? If that is not specified, that could be implied by a developer coming in. The way the code is now, and I stated that in my remarks to the board, that our HOA covenants say that the maximum height is 28 feet in our subdivision. According to your code in chapter 16, it says the maximum height of any structure located within 200 feet of the respective residential zoning district boundary shall not exceed the maximum height permitted in that district, and that is 28 feet. So we would like to appeal to the board to put in height restrictions to protect us, so that a developer coming in who might assume he can build a 90-foot hotel 40 feet from our fences cannot. So again, we are invested in Windsor. We love Windsor, and we want Windsor to be invested in us. So thank you again for your consideration. Those are the two main concerns that have always been there, and we ask that those provisions get adjusted and put in the standards. You've got a blank slate right now. There isn't a current development going on, so why not put things in place for the existing homeowners? We understand that new standards could be in place for new residential, but we would appeal to you for existing wordage in there. So thank you again.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wished to speak in the public hearing this evening?
Good evening. My name is Mike Downey. I live at 7568 Price Court. I'm here on behalf of the property owner, Doug Moreland. I have no prepared comments. Suffice it to say, I've said about all I can say about this subject. First and foremost, we don't understand why the precedent would be set on this property to establish a buffer between commercial and residential development when no buffer exists, as Mr. Ballstad stated, between residents and any other commercial developments in Windsor. When Doug had first proposed development of that property, however, he did recommend a 40-foot buffer in spite of the fact that it was not a requirement in the existing standards. The design concept we first presented that 4 of you saw was met with a great deal of enthusiasm in its appearance, and I dare say if it hadn't been that we were proposing automotive use, if we'd been proposing office buildings, apartment buildings, or retail, it would have been accepted without question because it met the existing standards in place for the property. Mr. Ballstad has pointed out what Centerra has done in their berming and landscaping. He failed to point out one fact, and that's the fact that the interstate varies in height greatly across Centerra and the Motorplex area versus 392 and I-25. A 7-foot berm and all of the landscaping that's required will greatly restrict visibility of any building, any development from the highway. Our opinion is a vote for these standards is a vote against retail on that property. Retail that Windsor is going to need, based on articles I've read in the newspaper about the town being concerned that they're lagging behind other communities in retail development. Why tie somebody's hands? Our biggest beef was with the landscape standards. We had no problem with the building design, building materials, so on and so forth. If you restrict visibility from the highway, trying to copy what Centerra has done, you're going to restrict retail development. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak in the public hearing?
Good evening, my name is Heidi Yankee. I reside at 7948 Bayside Drive in the Country Meadows subdivision. Thank you once again for giving us the opportunity to speak tonight and have our voices be heard on this very important matter. I'd like to begin by just going back a few months when Mr. Moreland and Mr. Downey stated that they were eager to abide by the enhanced design standards and to be a part of this community. Fast forward to September 21st, when Mr. Downey shared, on behalf of Mr. Moreland, strong concerns regarding certain elements of the enhanced design standards, such as restricting building height, berm height, increased landscaping requirements, and the minimum buffer. It's not difficult to ascertain why we're now hearing these arguments that these elements, and perhaps others, are too restrictive. Mr. Moreland is eager to sell his property quickly, and he is more than likely concerned that these enhanced design standards will deter a quick turnaround for his property. May I approach the board and hand a photo to you?
If you would give it to our clerk.
So some of you may have seen this photo before. The new board members, I'm sure, have not. But this is an example of one of the residents who will be directly impacted by your decisions regarding the design standards. The row of neighbors represents the minimum 40-foot buffer, a sad visual reminder of just how close to property lines businesses would be allowed to build. I would ask that you consider our voices tonight to increase the buffer to a minimum of 80 feet and restrict building height and keep that consistent and plain in the code. I would ask you also to consider partnering with residents who are not eager to move to the next business venture and collaborate closely with us in this process. Perhaps instead of a wait-and-see approach, I would like to suggest working with residents and the Planning Commission to determine what types of businesses would be a welcome addition to our established community. Businesses such as Meadows Veterinary Clinic, the Dayspring Christian Church, Summit Entertainment have respected the boundaries of business and residential. I encourage you to consider courting types of businesses which are sorely lacking in this area to entice them to join our community while respecting the enhanced design standards. specialty grocers, icon magnet stores such as perhaps Apple, golf courses, community pools. We've heard of Starbucks. So I just encourage you to perhaps court these and allow our community to grow. Thank you so much.
Is there any final public this evening that wanted to speak? Seeing none, I would seek a motion to close public hearing.
I would move we close public hearing.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor from Mr. Adams and a second from Mr. Morgan to close public hearing. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Public hearing is closed. Moving on to item 2 under board action, ordinance number 2016-1526. Repealing and amending portions of Chapter 17, Article 13 of the Municipal Code regarding enhanced design standards for development within the I-25 State Highway 392 Interchange Corridor Activity Center Area, CAC. Legislative action, Mr. Ballstead.
Unless there are any questions for staff, the Planning Commission recommended approval at their September 21st regular meeting that the town board approve the enhanced design standards as submitted in the ordinance.
Okay. I would also like to ask Mr. McCarter, I know we received several emails in the course of the week up to this topic that Mr. Downey, and I know we received Ms. Howells, and I think some emails from the Burnett's, that those all be entered into the record as well this evening?
That's appropriate, Madam Mayor, and I think just for clarity of the record, Mr. Ballstadt's presentation before you opened the public hearing should also be incorporated into the legislative history behind this ordinance, so I would encourage that as well.
Okay. And then are there any further questions for Mr. Ballstead on this ordinance?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Bedrell.
I just want to have a boil down, if you could, Mr. Ballstead, of all the amended changes to the CAC that we're doing here. Could you just do a boil down just of the main points?
How boiled down do you?
Well, obviously, this document had been previously approved, and as I understand it, a few of the changes that I'm hearing, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's removing the automobile dealership as an option for development, correct?
Correct.
And then it's adding the buffers, the 40 to 60 feet, as part of the CIC, correct?
Yeah, yes, the standards that were sent over, that the town board approved in April, that were sent to Fort Collins, included automobile dealerships, and it also included regulations that were specific to display areas and display lots and that type of thing. So the standards that went back to Fort Collins in July after automobile dealerships were no longer proposed simply removed those references. Otherwise, they remain identical to what the town board reviewed in April.
Okay. Thank you.
Any additional questions for Mr. Ballstead
Comments?
or comments?
You want those now, or do we need to wait for our resolution?
We're on it right now.
Well, I mean,
Or we don't have it open yet.
yeah, nobody's made a motion. Would you like to make a motion?
Sure. I move we approve ordinance number 2016-1526.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor from Mr. Baker and a second from Mr. Bennett. Comments?
Yeah, well, I know these aren't perfect, and I've talked about the buffer yards a lot. I've heard from neighbors a lot about this, but I think we shouldn't through all this work out that this is better than what we had before. And my hope is, as we go forward with potential users, that we can maybe even enhance these further. So I'm gonna support this tonight. I think we need to get these standards set to protect the homeowners. I know it's not up to where they want. I know it's not where the landowner wants, but I think we need to get something in there to protect and get the stability set. And as users come forward, the potential of maybe looking at these again.
Okay. Any additional comments or questions?
I'll make a quick comment.
Mr. Morgan?
I took to heart everything that I heard in the previous meetings as well as tonight. Like Mr. Baker, I think a lot of effort went into getting these as equitable as possible. And I truly understand both sides. The one comment I would like to make, reference the berming and landscaping, is that I-25 is intended for transit. It's not intended for shopping, for things that you can purchase along a major interstate freeway. I think the standards that have been set here reasonably accommodate both, and I'm going to be supporting this.
Anybody else?
Well, I would just mention one thing, that I've had concerns about this buffer only because of what I've heard from the residents throughout all the meetings. And so I feel like the planning department has looked at the differences between 40 to 60 feet versus 80 feet. And I think they've made a decision for good reasons. I think the whole thing has been very well prepared, and I can compliment the planning department for the work they've done. And I think we got a commitment from the Fort Collins group saying that it's well done. So I'm appreciative of that. And the berm, I don't know we'd ever decide because of the road. The road isn't perfectly level, and it isn't gonna meet a 3-foot or a 7-foot berm. But I think they've looked at that too, so I definitely will support the ordinance.
Okay.
Madam
Mr.
Mayor,
Boudreau?
I just have a comment to make, and I think that at this point it is important to move forward. I do want to take to heart and to keep in mind, though, what Mr. Downing did say about how sometimes we can have unintended consequences with the standards that we put in place if we are unnecessarily restricting the possibility of potential development there. So I think that we're moving forward here. I think it's the right thing to do, but I think we need to take account of, are we creating any issues for ourselves moving forward? We all know that there are development opportunities that we'd like to go after as a town and for the purposes of economic development. And I think that we need to be aware that if we set these in place and the lot ends up sitting vacant for a decade, maybe we need to, think about what we've done here and say, okay, and, obviously find an equitable balance between all parties involved. So that's all I had to say.
Okay. Anybody else? Well, I too am going to support the ordinance this evening. We have given numerous careful, deliberate consideration and serious consideration to both sides, trying to come up with a compromise of sorts, and compromising for the betterment, I believe, on the resident side and on the development side. Is it perfect? No. But it's the best, I think, that we're going to achieve at this point in time, not knowing what the potential or a potential project is. It is very substantially similar to Fort Collins, and that council has approved these designs based on our recommendation. And so I believe that we have spent the time and the energy at this point in time. Now, that does not mean that in the future, to Mr. Boudreau's point, that some development comes before us and needs to have a conversation about something differently. We certainly, I think, would be very open to having that discussion as well. So with that said, I do have a motion on the floor from Mr. Baker and a second from Mr. Bennett for ordinance number 2016-1526. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And it carries unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to item number 3, resolution number 2016-70, A resolution approving a donation agreement dated October 10th, 2016 between the Town of Windsor and Bro Land Acquisitions 2 LLC for the donation of approximately 150 acres of land to the Town of Windsor. This is legislative action, and Mr. Willis will be leading us in this
Thank you,
discussion.
Madam Mayor and Town Board. Like you guys are having kind of a short meeting, it's kind of quick, later or something. Anyway, Bro Land Acquisitions has approached the town with an interest in dedicating 150 acres to the Town of Windsor. And Mr. McCarter and Mr. Lucas and myself have been working very closely with Bro Land Acquisitions to explore the possibility of taking this land. Mr. Halverson, Eric Halverson from Bro Land Acquisitions is here as well to answer any questions you may have. For your consideration tonight is a donation agreement dated tonight between the Town of Windsor and Bro Land Acquisitions for approximately 150 acres. I wanted to orient you on the land real quick. So the parcel of land, the 150 acres, is the northern tip of it is currently the Poudre Trailhead along 257. The western boundary is 257, and the north and east boundary is the Poudre Trail, all the way down to a point where you come to our sewer treatment plant, and the southern boundary is our access road to our sewer treatment plant. The property is very valuable from an open space perspective and supports the comprehensive plan in regard to preservation of open space, specifically along the Poudre River corridor. There's riparian habitat. It was historically the Kodak Watchable Wildlife Area, and on a recent field trip with some local historians, there's indications that this might be the Benjamin Eaton homestead, the original location for their homestead. And then this would also secure the Poudre Trailhead and portions of the trail that are currently on a 20-year easement with that landowner. Bro is looking to retain a few rights on the property, one of which there is some existing oil facilities on the property, so those would remain. And then they would also like to pursue some sand and gravel mining with ultimate water storage on the property. One thing that we have done in the contract to make sure we protect ourselves and we don't end up with potential eyesores, we have asked that we have a date certain time for commencement of the sand and gravel mining. And once that sand and gravel mining commences, which it has to have started by 2026, the work has to be completed within 5 years, and restoration of the property has to occur. The site is master planned to have the Crossroads Boulevard cut through it. That's kind of the long short of kind of the benefits of the property and kind of the retained criteria. There is some phenomenal wildlife out there. In our recent visitations out there, and even earlier this spring, we saw some active eagles nesting in the area, specifically on this property. Saw a large group of wild turkeys. I'm not sure what they're, I think they're a gaggle maybe. And we also saw a coyote in the area. Next steps, or what we've completed to date is we've done a phase 1 environmental. We hired environmental resources to complete that. No major blemishes came up on the property. If this is approved tonight by town board, there will be an initiation of a title search, transfer of all existing documents that Bro has, leases, SUAs, governmental or regulatory matters. Also, this starts our official inspection period to go through all those documents. That will go on until November 1st officially, and then by October 24th, the town would have to notify Bro of any issues that would need to be remedied. They have 5 days to complete that, and then we are shooting for a formal acceptance by town board on November 21st. And that's all contingent upon your acceptance tonight. So I'm happy to answer any questions, or Ian, if you have anything you'd like to add.
Let me just add one thing, which is the November 21st date was in my head throughout the conversations with Eric and his partner in this, Craig Stith. November 21st is not a regular meeting night, it's a work session night, so it should actually be November 28th. But the plan is to follow this schedule. If this is approved tonight, what we will do is make certain that if we have any objections to the physical condition of the property, that we get those to Eric and Craig quickly, certainly before the 24th or 25th of October. And then also, if we have any issues with the title to the property, and that's going to come to us through what's called a title commitment. And we'll look through that, and if there are any issues, we'll call it defects in title, we'll refer those back to Bro to see if those can be fixed before November 1st. That's pretty commonplace in any real estate transaction. This one is a bit unique because it's a donation, it's not a purchase. So once we get to that November 1st date, if any objections we make have been satisfactorily resolved, then the only way the town of Windsor could back out of this is if Bro were to default. So, and that's a remedy that everybody has if the other party defaults. So the idea is that once we get to November 1st, the parties are relatively certain that they're going to close. If we don't close for whatever reason, then there's a penalty built into this agreement. And that penalty is that we have to reimburse Bro companies for the money they've spent on a survey and on their legal fees. Because the idea, ordinarily, if you did that in a sale transaction, some money would be put up as earnest money. This penalty for the attorney fees and the survey costs is really a substitute for earnest money. I don't anticipate that we'll have any problems that are insurmountable, but we'll know by November 1st. And once we get past that date, then chances are on the 28th of November, we will ask you to approve and accept the actual deed, and then we'll go close it at your instruction. So that's how this deal is structured.
Okay. Questions for Mr. Willis?
I do.
Okay, Mr. Morgan?
So I think if I recall, there's a large agricultural use there. Is that something that is currently being leased? Would we assume that lease going forward? Would they be leasing that from the town then?
Yes, the intent would be to continue to farm that as long as we could with that farmer or with a farmer.
But there's not a multi-year lease in place already?
No, there is a current lease, and Mr. McCarter, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a lease that will carry through the end of this year, and then whoever the owner of the property is could renew that for future years.
So if we were the owner, our intent is to lease that as long as possible?
Absolutely, that's excellent free maintenance of the property.
Agreed.
Okay, anything else? Mr. Baker?
You mentioned a existing watchable wildlife area. Is that going to be continued, enhanced? Could it be?
So for, I think it was about 15, 20 years, and maybe Mr. Halverson knows, there was an area, it's kind of this area that's hatched out with it doesn't do me any good to point at the screen, that's hatched out here. You kind of see this worn area where it looks like a walking path. That was an area that was leased to Colorado Parks and Wildlife, and it was designated as a watchable wildlife area. And that lease has since expired. Parks and Wildlife did not pursue that. So there is a potential that under town management that the same type of uses could be reused or repurposed.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions? Could we have the donor come up? Good evening. What would be your expectations moving forward once we've acquired the land?
Basically maintenance of, maintaining it as an open space. Obviously, as Wade mentioned, we're retaining some rights that have a sunset period on them to where we don't use it the way we're preserving in the agreement, that right goes away, with the idea of truly making it available to the town for how the town sees fit. I think that there will be some benefit, from my perspective, I think there will be some benefit once we get the design of Crossroads Boulevard going. That part of the property being in the town's hands will help facilitate that from this end. And so just, again, just being able to use it as an open space and a wildlife viewing area, in current condition or when there is water storage in place.
So how do you envision the sand and gravel mining coexisting, or don't they? Does that all happen and then after that, after you're done, then, or how do you envision that coexistence?
The property would be conveyed to the town, and then we have a certain amount of time, up until 2026 to start the work, and then 5 years to get it done, with the idea that to Wade's point, it doesn't start and become an issue, an eyesore at that intersection, that sort of thing, where we'll contract with a mining company, a professional mining company, to come in, bond appropriately, so that should something happen in the sand and gravel market, for instance, that either we or somebody to the town's desire would come in and finish the work, or at least the reclamation work. So we would just as we'd maintain the subsurface mineral rights, we'd maintain the rights to the sand and gravel also. So the idea there is that we've got a good relationship where those can exist together. You can perform the work while you're on the land.
So Wade, from the town's perspective, when do we envision we would start doing something with this property? When the sand and gravel mining is completed and done, or does some of it go simultaneously together?
We haven't even started having those discussions yet. I think conceptually, some access, maybe the old watchable wildlife area could be re-engaged, and that could occur. And with how this plan indicates where that mining might occur, there's a potential that you may be able to have both going on, depending on how we get access to the property.
Okay. So those conversations are yet to be had.
Correct.
The first step is to make sure that we get through the process and acquire the property. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Any additional questions,
I'm
Mr.
sorry, I have
Morgan?
one more follow-up question. I'm not sure if you'll know the answer, but provided it would become open space, correct?
Mhm.
Designated as such. Is there any issues with chemicals used in agriculture being applied to areas of recognized open space?
No.
So we can lease out open space for agricultural uses, and they can farm that, and any open space, I take it?
Yeah, correct. We would, in the lease agreement with the farmer, we would make sure that they were held to a standard of which they couldn't apply anything that was knowingly harmful to the environment. But
I just didn't know if there's some state law about your recognized open space, you're prohibited from doing, certain things on that land.
I'm
One of
not
those,
aware of anything. Are you, Mr.
since our intent, it sounds like it's to renew the lease, which I think is a good thing. I just wanna make sure that,
If I might, Mr. Morgan, it's probably gonna be dictated by our liability insurance company. We would have to add this piece to our
I see.
inventory, and that'd be the first question to them is, how do you manage this, and what's our risks evaluation? So, and I don't believe we've done that yet, but that would be one of the steps we'd need to take, and that'd probably be what would dictate all that.
Yeah, and I mean, we're just talking about things that may happen, but,
Mary, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Of Eric? Eric, on just 1.2, section 1.2, value of property. It says you'll do appraisal, and then prior to closing, we'll see the value. Do you generally have a range of estimate you think the valuation is?
Not off the top of my head right now, no.
Okay.
I know that's as far as I understand, it's been scheduled, so we should know that pretty soon.
And just to follow up on that, what I have said to Bro's lawyer is that the town doesn't really need to be a party to how that's valued when it comes to the charitable donation aspect of this. It's really not our business. And honestly, I would prefer to stay at arm's length from the valuation question, because what we want to do is accept a donation and then let the borough companies figure out how to file their tax returns, basically.
Okay.
Get my drift.
Any additional questions, Mr. Bennett?
Pertaining to this and any other open space properties that we own, this becomes town property, public property. What's the liability? I'm thinking about individuals who might just start saying it's public property, I want to take a hike through there. There's drilling pits, there's landscaping, there's potential risk. So what's our liability on this or any other open space?
Let's use Kiger as an example.
I was
The
thinking of Kiger
property
Chelsea.
at the northwest corner of County Road 13 and State Highway 392. That property is fenced. Around the perimeter of that property, in addition to the fencing, we've got signs up that say no trespassing, no public access or something like that. And so we've made it very clear that that property is off limits to the public. In our agreement on this property, and there's still a pretty big chunk of this that still needs to be negotiated, and those are the terms under which the mining will occur and the water storage will occur, as well as whatever rights the town has. But in each of those circumstances, what we have said is we expect the gravel mining operations to be fenced. So you would fence out intruders, and I think that's an important part of it. We would put up signage. And as landowners, that's pretty much your duty, is to make certain that people know it's not open to the public. And from there, if people should make the mistake of entering, then the liability for us is significantly reduced.
Any other questions?
It's not a question, but just a comment. For what it's worth, the Poudre Trail Board was very appreciative of what Bro has done and accepted. Wade and I made a proposal to the Poudre Trail Board last Thursday morning, and I think Wade will agree with me that they were appreciative of not only what we were doing, but also what Eric and Bro has done.
Okay. If no further questions, we have a resolution on the floor, resolution number 2016-70, and I would seek a motion.
Madam Mayor, I move to approve Resolution 26-70.
Second?
Okay, I have a motion on the floor from Mr. Morgan and a second from Mr. Adams to approve resolution number 2016-70. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd also like to take the opportunity, Madam Mayor and Town Council, to show some appreciation for your staff spending the time on this. There's been a lot of conversation with the town attorney and Wade and Eric, and so we really appreciate the time and effort. So, thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to item D, communications on our agenda this evening. Communications from a town attorney.
Nothing from me, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Communications from town staff. Anything further, Mr. Balsted?
Yes, Madam Mayor, Town Board, you have in your packet a memo and several attachments regarding oil and gas operator registrations. And this is a follow-up to the July work session that we had with the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission. As we discussed at that work session, in response to the governor's task force, the COGC has adopted a few new rules, and one of those requires operators to register with the communities within which they have mineral interest. And the town did receive 4 registrations from the following operators: Extraction Oil and Gas, Great Western Oil and Gas Company, PDC Energy, and Kerr-McGee Oil and Gas Onshore LP. So with those 4 registered operators, staff is able to request on behalf of the town their 5-year plans for the area, and staff did that, and those responses are enclosed in the materials. The only one that we're waiting on, Kerr-McGee has indicated that verbally that they don't have any immediate plans for any further activity in Windsor's area. However, they are still working on their map and materials to forward for our files. Otherwise, only Extraction Oil and Gas and Great Western Oil and Gas indicated that they have plans for the area, and we've been working with them, and we're fairly aware of their plans. So unless there are any other questions, this was just included in the packet for your information.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Belstead? Thank you. Chief Clemick?
No, thank you.
Mr. Lucas?
Just wanted to thank the town board and all the staff for coming out to the groundbreaking on Saturday, and let you know that as you all saw the crowd on Saturday, we had a large and long steady stream of folks on Sunday, and then today has been nonstop. We actually sold just as many memberships today as we did Saturday and Sunday combined. So we're off to a great start. So thank you.
Well, great job. I just want to commend you and your staff for putting together a great grand opening to a wonderful new facility.
Thank you. I will pass that.
Do you have any idea what the total number of memberships is?
We're almost to 1,000 members.
Way to go.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Unger?
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Town Board. I wanted to introduce to you our intern in the Town Manager's Office. This is Elizabeth. She is a CSU student, a senior studying poli-sci and a business minor. And crazy enough, she wants to go into local government, so we just want to introduce her.
Thank you for having me here tonight, and I am really honored and grateful to be working for the town of Windsor. And I look forward to meeting you all and working with you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Willis, did you have anything further? Okay, Ms. Van Meters?
One quick thing, we're working on an annual report, and we're hoping to have that distributed out in the mid-February. One of the articles that we want to feature is on the strategic plan and its process, and wanted to open it up to volunteers to see if any of you would be interested in being interviewed for that piece. Don't all volunteer at once. Great.
Sure.
3 of you? Perfect. I'll be in touch via email. Thank you.
Thank you. Communications from Town Manager.
Just a reminder, next week is October 17th, and your municipal judge interviews. I believe you have 4 candidates. You're going to start your interview process at 6 p.m. I believe your packet will include their application and resumes, and then also the schedule for the interviews will be ready for that night. 24th is the retail study analysis of Ms. Katie Press. She's ready to come in and provide that review, and then we'll talk, and I'll ask the mayor if we want to have some more budget follow-up discussion. We do have that scheduled right now for October 24th. October 31st is a 5th Monday. You have no meeting scheduled, but unfortunately that week we do need to get on this discussion with the town of Severance on the request to look at the IGA amendment, and the landowner is out for majority of November and has requested to get that done as soon as possible. So we've kind of identified November 2nd, the evening of November 2nd, as a good time to do that. That is also a planning commission meeting night, and they're gonna be a part of this, so what we thought we'd do is just go ahead and wrap it into a work session joint meeting with the town of Severance, Planning Commission, Town Board, Town of Windsor, Planning Commission, Town Board. Every room is booked at the end, so we'll probably have it here. I don't know if we'll do any food or not in these chambers. That might move it along also, some discussion wise. So, but just plan on it right now. November 2nd at 6 o'clock will be the Town of Windsor, Town of Severance IGA discussion. Let's see. Last thing, I announced at the employee meeting on Friday, and you all are invited to the next all-employee meeting. It's our end-of-year banquet celebration get-together, and Town Board always gets to come to that and be a part of that with your significant other or spouse. That is going to be, and you'll have a formal invite and a calendar invitation for December 9th. And the idea this year is that we are going to go do a formal kind of dinner, well, not formal. We will have a banquet, dinner, presentation, and then we will walk over the parking lot over to the Eagles game. So we're gonna hold it up at the conference center up at
Budweiser.
yeah, it's not gonna be in the Budweiser Event Center,
Oh.
but it'll be in that building to the south or to the east of there. Reasonably priced, same price we've done for all our various entertainment and end of night banquets. Last year, if you remember, we did the summit. Everybody seemed to have interest in doing something entertainment wise, but what piece that we did miss was the ability to kind of give presentations out. And so this year we're gonna do both. So we'll start at 5:30 that evening, and then we'll run over and do something at the Eagles Nest, I think, and have a fun time. So we'll send you out an invitation, and we'll need RSVPs probably next month or so. That is all I have.
Okay. Communications from town board members.
May I
Mr.
say
Adams?
something? I'll do this quickly, but, and I don't want to take thunder away from you, Madam Mayor, but I just want to thank the staff for doing a fantastic job that they've done this last week with the school situation, the budget, and being involved in so many other things that they have this last week. Secondly, I'd like to commend the Parks and Recreation, Mr. Lucas and your crew for a fantastic grand opening. Job well done. And third, I don't know whether it was 4 or 5, but our mayor did an absolutely fantastic job giving 4 or 5 speeches. I lost track after 4, but she was talking about Windsor, the things that Windsor has done, and she's talked to each of these and done a fantastic job, and I commend you.
Thank you.
I second that.
Any other communications?
Two things. I took advantage of our expanded rec center and worked out there this morning. It's wonderful. Thank you all for everything you've done, but also the experience here today and all kinds of people in and out there. It's wonderful. And do we have the cards on the strategic plan?
In the back here.
You're in the back there. Okay, great.
Okay, is that it? Okay, and my only communication is Friday night, Ivan and I accepted an award on behalf of the town of Windsor at Pelican Lakes. We received the first ever Energy Partner of the Year award that was given by a nonprofit, the Energy Community Charity Organization. So we were the Energy Partner of the Year. Extraction Oil was the oil and gas group of the year, and Great Western was the developer of the year. So we accepted award on the town's behalf, and so Mr. Arnold has that nice little statue that we'll figure out someplace to display it in the near future. With that, I would seek a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
I'll second.
A motion on the floor from Mr. Morgan and a second from Mr. Boudreau for adjournment. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.